The drawing fluttered from the child's fingers and landed at my feet during the most politically charged moment in Velorian history. The Queen's selection ceremony. Every noble in the Grand Hall froze. I should not have picked it up. Protocol demanded I let a servant retrieve it, that I keep my eyes lowered as befitting an unranked species representative. But the little girl was already crying, her silver tears leaving luminescent trails down lavender cheeks. Protocol in any galaxy could make me ignore a frightened child. I knelt and retrieved the paper. What I saw made my breath catch. Crude lines in colored wax depicted 5 figures. The tall one with the crown was unmistakably Queen Seraphine. The small figure with wings half drawn was Princess Velara, the child now hiccuping before me. 3 others stood in a row, and one of them, sketched in pale pink with brown hair, was clearly meant to be human. Was clearly meant to be me. Ambassador Callahan. The Queen's voice cut through the silence like a blade forged in a dying star. You will explain why my daughter has drawn you as part of the royal family. I stood slowly, the paper still in my hands. 300 Velorian nobles stared at me with expressions ranging from disgust to murderous intent. The Velorians were beautiful in the way that glaciers were beautiful, towering, elegant, and capable of crushing you without noticing. Their pale purple skin seemed to glow from within, and their eyes, entirely silver, with no visible pupil, reflected everything and revealed nothing. Your Majesty, I said, keeping my voice steady. I don't know why Princess Velara drew this. I've only spoken to her twice, both times in passing. Twice is 2 times too many for a human to address royalty, snarled Lord Kethren, the Queen's chief advisor. His ceremonial robes, black as the void between stars, rustled as he stepped forward. This is precisely why the consortium should never have granted Earth membership. They are familiar. Presumptuous. They do not understand rank. Queen Seraphine raised one hand, and Kethren fell silent immediately. She descended from her throne with a grace that made gravity seem like a suggestion rather than a law. Up close, she was even more striking, and more terrifying. Her crown was not metal but living crystal that had bonded with her skull at her coronation, marking her as Veloria's eternal sovereign until death. Velara, she said, and her voice softened almost imperceptibly. Come here. The child, 5 years old in human terms, though Velorians aged differently, approached her mother with the hesitant steps of someone expecting punishment. But the Queen only knelt, bringing herself to eye level with her daughter. Why did you draw the human in our family portrait? Princess Velara's lower lip trembled. Because he is kind, mother. He smiled at me when no one else does. He asked if I was well when I was sad. She looked at me with those enormous silver eyes. He sees me. The silence that followed was suffocating. I understood then what no diplomatic briefing had prepared me for. Queen Seraphine had been widowed 3 years ago when her consort was assassinated. Since then, she had ruled alone, her court a nest of vipers all waiting to see if she would take a new mate from among the noble houses. Princess Velara, the sole heir, was caught between factions who saw her as a political tool. The child was surrounded by hundreds of people and utterly alone. Just like her mother. Lord Kethren, the Queen said, rising. The selection ceremony is postponed. Gasps rippled through the hall. Your Majesty, the noble houses have waited 3 years. And they will wait longer. The Queen's eyes met mine, and I saw something behind that silver mask. Not warmth exactly, but calculation. Assessment. Ambassador Callahan will dine with the royal family tonight. I wish to understand what quality he possesses that my daughter finds so remarkable. She turned and walked away, Princess Velara's small hand clasped in hers. The child looked back at me once, and smiled. The dining chamber was smaller than I expected, intimate even. A table set for 3, real candles burning with flame that shifted through colors I had no names for, and food that smelled of spices from worlds I would never visit. Queen Seraphine sat at the head, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Princess Velara sat to her right, kicking her feet slightly because they didn't reach the floor. I sat across from the child, painfully aware that my simple diplomatic uniform looked shabby compared to their flowing silks. You may eat, the Queen said. Or do humans require different sustenance? The food is fine, Your Majesty. Thank you. She watched me take a bite, her silver eyes tracking my movements with unsettling precision. You are the first human to dine privately with a Velorian monarch. Does that not make you nervous? I've been nervous since I arrived on Veloria 6 months ago, Your Majesty. One more dinner won't change that. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps. You are honest. Foolishly so. Where I come from, we have a saying. Honesty is the best policy. Though I'll admit most humans are terrible at following it. Princess Velara giggled. The sound seemed to startle the queen, as if she hadn't heard her daughter laugh in a long time. Ambassador Callahan, the queen said slowly. What did you say to my daughter that made her include you in her family portrait? I set down my utensil. The first time I saw her, she was standing alone in the garden, while her tutors discussed something nearby. She looked sad. I asked if she was all right. She said she missed her father. I paused. I told her I understood. That I missed my family too. Your family? My wife and daughter. They died 4 years ago. A car accident on Earth. The words still hurt to say, even after all this time. My daughter was about Valera's age. The queen's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. You did not mention this in your diplomatic credentials. It wasn't relevant to trade negotiations. No, she agreed quietly. I suppose it wasn't. Princess Velara looked between us with a perceptiveness that children often possessed, and adults often forgot. Mother, she said, can Ambassador Callahan tell me a story? Human stories are different. Velara, the ambassador is not your entertainer. I don't mind, I said. If Her Majesty permits. The queen studied me for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. I told Velara the story of the little prince, adapted, simplified, made new. A lonely prince on a tiny asteroid, a rose he loved. A fox who taught him that what is essential is invisible to the eye. By the end, Velara's eyes were drooping, and Queen Seraphine was looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. You are not what I expected, Ambassador, she said. Neither are you, Your Majesty. For the first time, the corner of her mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was something. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of formal dinners that became less formal. 3 weeks of Princess Velara dragging me through palace gardens to show me flowers that sang and insects that wrote poetry in their flight patterns. 3 weeks of Queen Seraphine watching with those silver eyes, asking questions that seemed innocuous, but cut to the bone. Why did you become a diplomat after your family died? Why do humans form such strong pair bonds when your lifespans are so brief? Do you believe in destiny, Ambassador? The last question came late one evening, after Velara had fallen. Asleep on a couch in the queen's private study. The child had insisted I read to her again, and neither her mother nor I had the heart to refuse. I used to, I said, watching Velara's peaceful face. Before the accident, I thought everything happened for a reason. Now, Yoon. I shrugged. Now I think we just do our best with what we're given. Queen Seraphine was standing by the window, starlight casting her in silver and shadow. The Velorian faith teaches that all things are ordained by the void from which we came. That our lives are threads in a tapestry already woven. She paused. I believed that once. Before my consort was murdered. Before my daughter became a pawn in political games, I cannot seem to end. Your Majesty, Seraphine. I blinked. I'm sorry? In private, when my daughter is asleep and no one can see, you may call me Seraphine. She turned to face me, and for the first time I saw exhaustion behind the mask. I have not had a conversation of substance in 3 years, Ambassador. Everyone wants something from me. Everyone has an agenda. But you, she tilted her head. You simply talk to my daughter because she is lonely. You tell her stories about roses and foxes. You do not ask for trade concessions or political alliances. I'm still your diplomatic representative. I have a job to do. Yes, but you do it with kindness. It is, unusual. She moved closer, and I caught her scent, something like jasmine in winter air. The nobles think I brought you here to humiliate you. To show Velara that humans are inferior, and she should not grow attached. They expect me to dismiss you soon, perhaps assign you to some remote outpost where you can be forgotten. Is that what you plan to do? No. The word was soft, but certain. I find that I do not wish to dismiss you at all. And that terrifies me, Marcus Callahan. It was the first time she had used my given name. The following week, Lord Kethren made his move. The accusation was elegantly constructed. I had allegedly been sending intelligence about Velorian defensive capabilities to a rival species. The evidence was fabricated, of course, but it was convincing enough that the noble houses demanded an immediate trial. I stood in the grand hall again, but this time, there was no selection ceremony, only judgment. Lord Kethren presented his evidence with barely concealed triumph. The noble houses murmured their approval. Queen Seraphine sat on her throne, and I could not read her expression. The penalty for espionage, Lord Kethren declared, is death, or if the Queen shows mercy, permanent exile to the prison moons. Ambassador Callahan. The Queen's voice echoed through the hall. Do you have anything to say in your defense? I thought about my options. I could argue, protest, point out the obvious holes in the evidence. But, looking at the gathered nobles, I knew it wouldn't matter. They had already decided. They wanted me gone because I represented something they couldn't control. A genuine connection to the Queen that had nothing to do with politics. Only this, Your Majesty, I said. Whatever decision you make, I hope you know that I would never willingly hurt you or your daughter. These past weeks have meant more to me than any diplomatic achievement ever could. Whispers erupted. One did not speak to the Queen of personal matters in open court. Lord Kethren's face contorted with rage. You see? The human presumes to speak of emotional connection to our sovereign. This alone proves his manipulative intent. Enough. The Queen rose, and the hall fell silent. I have examined the evidence Lord Kethren presented. It is false. Gasps. Lord Kethren went pale. Furthermore, the Queen continued, descending from her throne with measured steps. I have evidence of my own. Evidence that Lord Kethren orchestrated this accusation to remove Ambassador Callahan from Court R. Evidence that he has been plotting to force my hand in the selection ceremony by eliminating any obstacle to his chosen candidate. She stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could see the fine texture of her skin, the subtle glow that pulsed beneath it. The ambassador is innocent. Lord Kethren is guilty of conspiracy against the crown. She turned to face the assembled nobles. He will be exiled to the prison moons. Anyone who participated in this scheme may confess now and receive reduced sentences, or remain silent and share his fate when I discover them. Chaos erupted. Several nobles fell to their knees, confessing involvement. Guards moved through the hall, making arrests. Lord Kethren was dragged away, screaming about tradition and honor and the impossibility of a human in the Queen's court. Through it all, Seraphine stood beside me like a statue carved from twilight. When the hall finally emptied, she turned to face me. You could have defended yourself, she said. You could have argued, presented counter-evidence, fought. Would it have made a difference? No. They had already decided. She paused. But you didn't know I would protect you, I hope. Her silver eyes searched my face. Why? Because you're not what they think you are, Seraphine. You're not cold or cruel or unfeeling. You're someone who's been alone for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to be seen. And when someone finally sees you, I hesitated. You don't destroy them. You protect them, just like they protect you. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she reached out and took my hand. Her touch was cool but not cold, and I felt something pass between us, a current of understanding that needed no words. Come, she said softly. Velara will want to know that you are safe. She has been crying since the accusations were announced. We walked through the palace corridors hand in hand, and the servants we passed said nothing. But they saw. Everyone saw. The assassination attempt came 2 months later. Velara and I were in the garden, examining a chrysalis that would soon become a moth capable of limited telepathy. She had been teaching me Velorian words, laughing at my pronunciation, her silver eyes bright with joy that no longer seemed unusual to me. I didn't see the assassin. I only heard the faint whistle of displaced air and reacted on instinct, throwing myself over Velara as something scorched past my shoulder. Pain exploded through my arm. The world tilted. I heard Velara screaming, heard guards shouting, felt hands pulling me away from the child I was desperately trying to shield. Ambassador, the princess is safe. You must let go. I couldn't see properly. Everything was becoming gray at the edges. But I saw Velara's face, saw the terror in her eyes, and I managed to say, It's okay. You're okay. I've got you. Then darkness took me. I woke in a medical chamber that smelled of antiseptic and something sweetly floral. My shoulder was bandaged, and when I tried to move, pain lanced through my entire left side. Don't. Seraphine was sitting beside my bed. She wore no crown, no formal robes, just a simple gown that made her look less like a queen and more like a woman who hadn't slept in days. How long? I managed. 3 days. The weapon was designed to kill Velorians. On a human. She paused. The physicians weren't certain you would survive. Velara? Unharmed. Because of you. Her voice cracked on the last word, and I saw something I never thought I'd see. Tears in Queen Seraphine's silver eyes. You almost died protecting my daughter. You jumped in front of a weapon without hesitation for a child who is not yours, of a species that has treated you with contempt since you arrived. She's just a kid. You didn't deserve it either. Seraphine leaned forward and her hand found mine. Marcus. Why? Why would you do that? I thought about my daughter, about the day I got the call that changed everything. About standing at 2 graves in the rain, wondering if I would ever feel anything again. Because I couldn't save my daughter, I said. But I could save yours. Seraphine's composure shattered. She bent forward, pressing her forehead to our joined hands, and wept. I felt her tears against my skin, cool and luminescent, and I raised my good hand to stroke her hair. I thought I'd lost you, she whispered. I thought, when they carried you in, covered in blood, I thought I would have to bury another person. She stopped herself. Another person, you what? She looked up, and her eyes were raw in a way I'd never seen. The queen was gone. Only the woman remained. I cannot say it. If I say it, it becomes real, and if it becomes real, it can be taken from me. I understood then. I understood the wall she had built around herself, the ice that kept everyone at a distance. It wasn't coldness. It was terror. The terror of loving something and watching it die. Seraphine, I said softly. I'm still here, for now, for as long as I can be. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, something had changed. Some final barrier had crumbled. Velara has been sleeping outside your door every night, she said. The guards tried to carry her back to her chambers, but she refused. She said the human in her family picture might need her. My throat tightened. Can I see her? Seraphine rose and walked to the door. When she opened it, a small purple blur launched itself into the room and onto my bed, careful to avoid my injured shoulder. You're awake, Velara cried, burying her face in my chest. I was so scared. I thought you were going to go away like Father did. I wrapped my good arm around her, holding her close. Over her head, I met Seraphine's eyes. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Not if I have any choice in the matter. Seraphine watched us for a long moment. Then she approached the bed and sat on its edge, close enough that her knee touched my hip. Velara, she said gently. Do you remember what we discussed? About what happens when 2 people care for each other very much. The child nodded solemnly. Bonding. Like you and Father. Yes. Seraphine's voice was barely a whisper. Would it trouble you if I considered such a bond with Ambassador Callahan? Velara looked up at me, then at her mother, then back at me. Her small face broke into a radiant smile. He's already in the picture, Mother. I told you. Seraphine laughed, a real laugh, bright and unexpected. And for a moment, she looked young. Unburdened. Free. The selection ceremony was reconvened 3 months later, but its purpose had changed. The grand hall was packed with every noble house, every diplomat, every significant figure in the Velorian Empire. They had come expecting the queen to finally choose a consort from among their ranks, to end the political uncertainty that had plagued the court for years. They did not expect what happened instead. Queen Seraphine stood at the top of the stairs leading to her throne, resplendent in white crystal that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Beside her stood Princess Velara, holding a small bouquet of flowers that changed color with her mood. Currently, a vibrant pink. And beside Velara stood me. Lords and ladies of Veloria, the queen announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. I have made my selection. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw nobles leaning forward, certain their candidate had been chosen. For 3 years, you have presented your sons and brothers and cousins, men of noble blood, of ancient lineage, of political advantage. Seraphine paused. And for 3 years, I have refused them all. Do you know why? Silence. Because not one of them saw my daughter as anything other than a tool. Not one of them spoke to her with kindness, or asked about her well-being, or treated her as a child deserving of love rather than a political asset. Her silver eyes swept the room, until Marcus Callahan, of Earth. Gasps. Outraged muttering. Several nobles looked like they might faint. A human, Seraphine continued, from a species you consider primitive and beneath your notice. A man of no noble blood, no political power, no wealth to speak of. A man who lost his own family and still found room in his heart to love mine. She turned to me and extended her hand. I took it. 3 days ago, in a private ceremony witnessed only by my daughter and the High Priestess of the Void, I bonded with this man. He is no longer Ambassador Callahan. He is Prince Consort Marcus, my husband, and Velara's father in all ways that matter. The hall erupted. I barely heard the chaos. I was looking at Seraphine, my wife, my partner, my unexpected second chance, and seeing the smile she reserved only for me and Velara. They're not happy, I murmured. They will adjust, or they will be replaced. She squeezed my hand. Are you happy? I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The grief that had hollowed me out. The diplomatic posting I had taken just to escape memories. The child who had drawn a picture that changed everything. Yes, I said. More than I ever thought I could be again. Princess Velara tugged at my sleeve. Papa Marcus? The word made my heart clench. She had started calling me that a month ago, hesitantly at first, then with increasing confidence when she saw that it made me smile rather than cry. Yes, little one, I have something for you. She produced a piece of paper from the folds of her dress, another drawing, more carefully done than the first. I made a new family picture, for your desk. I knelt to look at it. 5 figures again. Queen Seraphine with her crown. Princess Velara with her wings now fully colored in. Me, still pale pink with brown hair, but now wearing a small crown of my own. And 2 new figures, smaller, sketched in lighter colors. Who are these? I asked. Velara grinned. My future siblings, of course. Mother says maybe someday, if the bond takes properly. She pointed at each figure in turn. This is the family we have. And this is the family we will have. I wanted you to see. I looked up at Seraphine and saw her cheeks had darkened slightly, the Velorian equivalent of a blush. Velara has strong opinions about the future, she said dryly. I can see that. I stood, the drawing carefully held in my hands. Around us, the noble houses continued their outraged protests, their political calculations, their predictions of doom. We ignored them. You know, I said, when I came to Veloria, I was running away from grief. I never expected to find a family again. And I, Seraphine replied, never expected to find someone who would love my daughter simply because she needed to be loved. She leaned in and pressed her forehead to mine, a Velorian gesture of profound intimacy. We are both fools, Marcus Callahan. The best kind of fools. Princess Velara wriggled between us, demanding to be included in the embrace. I lifted her with my good arm. The other had healed, but I still favored it, and held her between us. The alien child drew her family, Seraphine murmured against my ear. And I was in the picture, standing next to the queen. I pulled back to look at her. What? Something I thought months ago when I first saw that drawing. I wondered what kind of man would be content to stand beside a queen rather than trying to stand above her. Her silver eyes gleamed. I found him. Below us, the Grand Hall continued to seethe with political turmoil. Treaties would need to be renegotiated. Alliances would shift. The galaxy would have to adjust to the reality of a human prince consort in the most powerful empire known to exist. None of it mattered. What mattered was the woman whose hand I held, the child who had adopted me through sheer force of will, and the future we would build together. What mattered was that I had been seen. And in being seen, I had finally come home.